everybody. Welcome to this edition of Talking Shipa. I am Jim Schultz. I'm a developer advocate here at Shipa, and I'm here today with Shipa founder and CEO Bruno Andrade. Say hello, Bruno.
Hey, Jim.
The topic for the video today is going to be application policy management. Adding layers of security, management, measurement capabilities to your apps can really be challenging, especially in Kubernetes. But these are things that are really required in order to support your corporate mandates and really to ultimately give your users the best experience possible. At Shipa, we do offer features for this out of the box that'll enable your DevOps or your platform teams to create an application framework for defining policies that are ultimately applied to your applications and the services as they're deployed. Things like RBAC, network policies, third-party services, container registry, vulnerability scans, and a lot more. So Bruno, if you wouldn't mind, take the time on this video just to show us what Shipa does in regards to this.
Yeah, of course, Jim. So as Jim mentioned, when you started rolling out Kubernetes and microservices in your organization, especially at an enterprise level, there are a few guardrails and controls that we as DevOps, we are entitled to implement and enforce, right? And most of the solutions out there or tools, they're very driven on the cluster level, I would say policy management, which can become cumbersome at scale. So Shipa implemented governance and controls at an application level instead. And these controls and guardrails, they are implemented through what we call frameworks. Frameworks is what you define in terms of application level controls and governance and guardrails that you want to give your developers. So you can give your developers to tie these frameworks into your CI pipeline so they can focus on deploying application code. And these frameworks, it will enforce the controls that you defined before. And on the other side of the picture, your frameworks can be tied directly to a Kubernetes cluster. Doesn't really matter the provider. It may be a managed services Kubernetes or an on-premises Kubernetes, but you can tie these. So the framework is the middle layer, I would say, between your developers and CI pipeline and your Kubernetes. And for you to define and create these frameworks, you can find complete options and instructions when it comes to the documentation through learn.shipa.io and docs. You can come here to framework management. Here, you're going to find templates and very detailed specification on how to create these templates. But let's look at it, how to do that in real life. We assume for this example that you already have Shipa installed in one of your clusters. If you don't have that yet installed, there are videos here available here that can guide you through step-by-step on how to install Shipa. But once you install Shipa and you log into your Shipa dashboard, you can come into frameworks. The frameworks, they can be created directly from the Shipa dashboard as well as from your CLI. In this case, to make it simple, we're going to create it from the CLI. And I want to create that from the CLI to show you what the structure actually is on the back end. And you can use this framework templates and files directly from your CI pipeline. So even the automation of creation of these frameworks can be done directly from your pipeline as well. But let's look at how to do that. The first step is I'm defining the Shipa framework. In this case, I'm calling it Shipa Demo Framework. I'm defining things such as, is this a default framework? So if my developers, they don't specify a framework, basically this one will pick up and will enforce the guardrails here defined. I'm defining, is this public? So is public in a way that, is it available to all my development teams using Shipa, or no, just the teams that I assign to it? I'm starting to go down here and you'd see policies in terms of amount of memory and CPU. So that's what the plan enforces. So every application gets the predefined plan or CPU and memory as they are deployed. I'm defining security layer levels. So should security scans run at the code level or the image level, or maybe both or none of them? And I'm defining any components that I want to ignore, if any. And it's important to mention that the controls here they're enforced both at the application deployment time and post-deployment. So if anything happens post-deployment, basically the framework will alert you and let you know. And I can keep going down and including all the other possibilities from a framework and application control perspective, such as which teams can use it to deploy their applications, what external services I want to connect to it. For example, I want to make a MongoDB available to applications deployed through this framework. I can limit how many applications can be deployed. I can limit what registry, for example, the images can come from when deploying these. So that's me as a DevOps person defining the controls that I want to enforce when my developers are deploying their apps. Great. Now I have the file, and directly from my CLI, I can create that framework. So I can do Shipa framework, add, and the name of the file. If you're running that directly from your CI, you can add that file to your CI pipeline and run a Shipa framework add directly from your pipeline as well. So you can create and delete those as you need based on your Git operations. And as soon as I run this, I see framework successfully created. If I go back here, I can see Shipa demo framework. It is a framework that is available and it is defined, but yeah, it is not bound to any cluster. If we come into clusters, now it's the time that we can either bind this framework to a new cluster. Let's say we can add a GKE or an AKS cluster, and we can bind that framework to a specific cluster that we're adding. Or if we like, we can bind that framework to an existing cluster that we already have on Shipa. So for example, here I have a cluster called AKS Cinema UI. If I want, I can come in here and update that cluster to also be bound to this framework. So deployments that happen pointing to this framework will go directly to my AKS cluster in this case, and all the policies defined in this framework will be enforced and applied. So now me as a DevOps, I know that every application deployed follow these rules, and I don't need to go at a cluster level to manage these policies. Does that help, Jim?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I couldn't get over my mute button fast enough. Yeah, thank you very much for walking through that with us, Bruno. And I really hope this helps our viewers better understand the application policy management features within Shipa. I've included some links, some relevant links in the description as well. Keep an eye out for the next Talking Shipa video, and we will see you all there. Thank you, Bruno.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, folks. Bye.